From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Evening Edition.
Now at 6, a mother behind bars after a suspected DUI turned fatal. What we know about the tragic crash up in Napa. Plus, the movement against the Trump administration's federal cuts is growing in the Bay Area.
I don't know if we'll win. I don't know what will come of this, but it's worth fighting for.
And we're hearing from locals who are being impacted by that downsizing. Later, Lafayette's Hillside Memorial is at risk from a new housing development.
It really does take our effort as a community to keep it going.
How a lawsuit against the city factors into the debate. But we begin tonight in Napa, where police confirm that a mother is under arrest on suspicion of DUI after a crash killed her 2 children. This happened on southbound Highway 29 at the Amola Avenue off-ramp this morning. CHP says that the mother, a 10-year-old boy, and a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old girl were in the car when it went off the road and crashed into a tree. The children died at the scene. The mother was taken to the hospital with major injuries and was arrested. CHP said that all 3 of the people were wearing their seatbelts at the time of the crash. And in Hayward, police are investigating a deadly shooting on Mission Boulevard. Officers got to the scene about 9 o'clock last night. They found a man with a number of gunshot wounds. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Nobody has been taken into custody. In San Francisco tonight, confusion over the future of federal workers after a judge ruled that some of those laid off across the country might be reinstated as early as tomorrow. Federal workers here rallied outside City Hall today to protest the massive cuts made by the Trump administration. And Dahlin has the story.
A few hundred people rallied in front of San Francisco City Hall on Sunday afternoon to protest the mass firings of federal workers.
Nearly everyone I work with is in fear right now. Even giving this interview, I'm afraid. I think there's been a real chilling effect in the way they just summarily terminate people.
But Andrew Fish says he's got to stand up and fight back against bullies. Fish works for the National Park Service. He says the Elon Musk-led Doge has already fired 10 co-workers in his area.
This isn't meant just to destroy the federal government. It's meant to traumatize us along the way. We're being bullied, and you're right, we're angry.
He and many other federal workers from different departments say they're fed up with the demonization and being labeled by many in the Trump administration as waste.
Of the 4 people working on it, 2 have been illegally fired. And, I'm not allowed to work right now. They've told us, pens down, don't do any work tasks.
Solange Hilfinger-Pardo works for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. She just wants to end the chaos and go back to work.
I love my job. I'm passionate about my job. And there's a lot of work to be done to protect the American consumer, right?
I help make sure that banks don't cheat like everyday people. I do investigations and I go to court on behalf of those everyday people, and I hope I can get back to work, but I'm currently being told not to work.
Even though a couple of federal judges have ordered the Trump administration to reinstate the fired workers, no one here is clear if that will happen or when it'll happen.
I am worried if I don't have a job, we're not going to have health care. I have 2 small kids.
Fish says, like many people here, they're dedicated workers who just want to go back to doing what they love.
I don't know if we'll win. I don't know what will come of this, but it's worth fighting for it. I believe in this country.
There are a lot more questions and answers right now, but we should find out more on Monday on how the Trump administration will respond to those court rulings, basically saying those fired workers should be brought back to work ASAP.
A completely different tone in Sacramento at the site of California's GOP convention. Lauren Toms was there last night. She spoke with people who were excited about what's going on in Washington, including former chair Fred Whitaker, who told us that President Trump's push to shrink the federal government is vital.
If we can reduce the size of the administrative state by reducing regulations, by consolidating different programs, we're going to actually, I think, unleash the economy, and you're going to get the government back to its original purpose.
Last night, delegates voted for new leadership. They elected Corin Rankin, the first black woman to lead California Republicans. And we heard from members who say that they need to keep the momentum going from the 2024 elections.
And it's really important for our party to come together and do that. It sets the course for the next couple of years.
It's not just policies they're looking to reverse, but to flip a state, California, that has a supermajority of Democrats in the state legislature. Weather very much in the news nationally. At least 40 people are confirmed dead now because of a massive storm system moving through the central and southern U.S. Parts of Mississippi and Missouri, buildings and homes were left in shreds. An entire roof landed on a car. And as fierce winds toppled trees, they also took out power lines. It's a look at the damage in a Mississippi neighborhood. One resident said that he was in his house when a tornado came through last night. And while there's a lot of cleaning up to do, he's happy just to be alive.
And then you go in a house, you got water. You got water this deep. Inside. And it's just a miracle.
The storm now is headed onto the eastern seaboard, more than 60 million people in its path. So out here, we get a little light rain, cool weather. Out there, they'd get these fireworks that has now killed 40 people.
That was our storm.
That's what you said.
It was here on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And this is such a instructive example of what happens when these storms hit the midsection.
Right. Why the difference? I mean, we get a few thunderstorms. Out here, they get chaos.
Look at the water out here. So these are water temperatures in the 80s.
Yep.
For us out here, when that storm came in and hit California, it was sitting over water in the 50s. Huge difference because these storms really feed on that energy. Let's go back to what that storm looked like on Wednesday. We had our share. This is going back to Wednesday. We were on the air here at noon on Wednesday because there were 2 separate severe thunderstorm warnings that had been issued. And we were live on KPIX tracking them as they happened. Thankfully, we didn't get any damage. No one was hurt. But then that storm, which was here and having just hit the front lines of the West Coast from the Pacific, marched inland. Watch it kind of disappear over the dry air of the Rockies. Get a view out there over the Gulf, because as soon as this storm accessed all that warm water out here, look what shows up. That is how these storms turn into monsters when they get to the midsection of the country. All of the warm, humid air out here is effectively getting pulled up into that system. Look at the wind streams out here. Get that wide view out there again and look what the wind was doing. So it was picking up all that warm, moist air and pulling it into this storm. And that's why these things, when they get to the midsection of the country, really take off in far more significant ways than they do when they're over us. The other addition is pulling in all the cold air from Canada. So we've got the Rockies, we've got all these mountains in the way. When these storms hit the plains, there's nothing between this storm and the cold air of the Arctic, but like a barbed wire fence on the Canadian plains. So all the cold air comes down. This is why these storms happen that way and why we are protected for the most part from storms like that. It's also why we don't get hurricanes here, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with that drill by now, but boy, what an example from this storm that has just moved over parts of the rest of the nation. All right, let's take a look at our weather today. So the clouds certainly looked impressive for most of the day. The rain is just now starting. We have rain in our forecast primarily for tonight and into tomorrow morning. So what I'll leave you with is just a view of the very start of this, because we haven't really gotten started yet. This is going to start to pick up in intensity by the time we get to about 8 o'clock tonight. Now, this looks different. Look at the timestamp up there. Now we're seeing the cold front come into the bay. Widespread rain will begin tonight, but it is tomorrow in the morning and the afternoon where we might get somewhat more impressive rain from this. I'll explain why coming up in the full forecast just a few minutes. For now, Brian, back to you.
All righty, thanks, Darren. As you can see, a hillside covered with crosses in Lafayette, which has been there for a long time. If you've driven through Lafayette, you've probably noticed them. Hundreds of white crosses symbolizing the toll of war. It's a homegrown memorial, and now a local developer who owns that land is proposing a new housing project for the area. But as John Ramos reports, it looks like the crosses get to stay.
The Lafayette crosses didn't start out as a memorial. In fact, it was meant as a protest against the war in Afghanistan and Iraq, but it has come to mean so much more to people. And while this display has been threatened in the past by developers, it now looks like it may be saved by a developer. When they first went up, some people were outraged. The in-your-face protest by local builder Jeff Heaton about the people killed in foreign wars was seen as disrespectful by many. Laura Duto lives about half a mile away.
It took a lot of bravery for Jeff Heaton and the founders, many of them that are still on the board right now, to protest in that way. It was absolutely a protest. And over the years, it's just come to take on so many different meanings for different people.
Slowly, the memorial began to change. Names were added to crosses and sometimes pictures. And before long, people began to see it as a loving memorial to those who were lost. But it never felt very permanent, sitting on private property right across from the Lafayette BART station, a prime location for housing developers. So Duto, herself an architect, made a decision to buy the property.
Well, for years there was kind of always this risk that, it was going to be sold or that we were going to be asked to take the memorial down. And so I think at that point I sort of did take a leap of faith, like in thinking that maybe I could do some housing back here and maybe preserve the memorial as part of that. I didn't see the reason why that needed to come down to do this.
This is a housing development on the backside of the hill. 15 single-family homes of different sizes on the 3-acre property, all without touching the Cross Memorial, which Duto has already given an easement for the preservation group to maintain.
Definitely, as a small-scale developer, this is like, the biggest project I've ever, attempted, and but yet somehow feels comfortable because it's in my backyard.
But the project, called Oak Hill Place, is different from most of the homes in Lafayette, and Duto is expecting some pushback. She's erected a set of flags on poles to simulate the elevation of the 2-story homes, and it's something that Peony Wellen can't really miss.
It looked like an apartment complex to us, not even like a house.
It's literally right in your backyard.
Right in front of us.
The new structures will tower over Wellen's home, and the pastoral scene from her backyard will never be the same.
We didn't even expect that because there's so many space around here, and we have no idea why they have to put that right in front of the neighbor and blocking their view.
Wellen hopes they will make an adjustment to the plans, but the truth is state law has given the power to developers to build higher density housing without much interference from anyone. So the city has pretty much admitted that they have no authority to force any changes at all. Duto thinks her proposal will bring some new forms of housing to the city, and no matter what happens with it, she's happy to play a part in preserving a protest that became so much more.
Yeah, it makes me proud to be here. It makes me proud to be in this community that people would have, put themselves out like that and made such a statement at a time when it needed to be made.
The memorial itself has always looked a bit ragged, but that is its charm. The community built it cross by cross, and it will continue because they want it that way.
And coming up, measles cases have been popping up in Texas, as you've probably heard. Now, local health officials are working to boost vaccine numbers here. Welcome back. A dozen Bay Area counties issued a joint warning that has urged us to make sure that we are fully vaccinated against measles. This comes as cases continue to rise across the country, and reporter Max Darrow's got the latest.
The ongoing measles outbreak in Texas and rise in cases across the nation becoming a growing cause for concern among Bay Area health leaders. That includes Krishna Sarasi of the Santa Clara County Department of Public Health.
Measles is an extremely contagious disease, and it can potentially cause very severe disease. Sadly, in the measles outbreak in Texas, there have already been 2 reported deaths, one of them in a child.
In recent years, the measles vaccination rate has dropped below 95% nationwide, the threshold health experts say is needed to mitigate potential spread. Now, doctors are trying to boost vaccination rates and confidence.
The measles vaccine is safe and effective. It's the most effective way to protect yourself from getting infected with measles virus.
Most people get the vaccine as a child, as a part of their MMR series, once after 12 months old and again after 4 years old. Per the CDC, 1 dose of the MMR vaccine is 93% effective, 2 doses, 97%. As of March 14th, over 300 measles cases have been reported nationwide.
Currently, the outbreak in Texas seems to be largely affecting children.
In California, 5 reported cases, all related to international travel, not the outbreak in Texas. Risk remains low in the Bay Area, but Sarasi urges people who are unsure if they received measles vaccines as children to check with their doctors.
Getting vaccinated against measles is the single best way to protect yourself and your family against getting infected with measles.
According to CDC figures, 1 in 5 unvaccinated people in the United States who get measles are hospitalized.
Yikes. A look at the ski lifts this morning at the Sierra, where, rather, as we should say, in the Sierra, where skiers and snowboarders are enjoying some fresh powder after everything is an atmospheric river now. Piles of snow were dumped in the area this week, while several more inches of snowfall is projected to come down. Pretty sight, though. Looks like things are clearing up. What about for us?
Well, we're going to look at the snow accumulation from this storm.
Yeah.
And I'll do a little bit of early...
I'm going to talk with you separately when it's a storm or an atmospheric river, and, when there's a distinction between the two.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we do have, I notice, a few echoes that are popping up on the radar.
Light rain right now.
Yeah.
So let's start there, because the light rain's been going for most of today in the North Bay. We've even gotten a couple hundredths of an inch of rain for parts of Sonoma County so far. It just hasn't amounted to a whole lot yet, and it has been hung up there for most of the day. You see the time lapse up here, just a replay of what today has looked like from our camera on top of Mark Hopkins Hotel, looking out over the clouds. Let's take this rain and bring it forward, because the real focus needs to be not only the rain we're about to get tonight, but I want to get you ready for tomorrow in the late morning and afternoon when we could see a few isolated thunderstorms. So here comes the increasing showers over the next few hours. This gets us ahead to about 8 o'clock tonight, and that's really when the cold front from this system comes on shore. You kind of see it on here. There is this organized line that's like working its way up kind of along here. That's the cold front. That's where the rain becomes more widespread and steady in nature. That then will march its way across the rest of the bay over really the course of the whole night. And it's not till we get to around 3 or 4 in the morning when that comes to an end. Let me show you what I mean. Keep your eye on that rain. We're going to clear it out fairly quickly because I want to get to tomorrow. That's the overnight rain, pretty steady. Then we get a little bit of a break in the pre-dawn hours. And don't get fooled by thinking we're done with the storm or not, because look what's going to show up tomorrow. See the time up here? That's tomorrow morning, like in the 9 o'clock hour. These are going to be isolated showers that can come through in the form of isolated thunderstorms. We've got another one sitting out here, which could deliver some more as it works its way onshore through parts of the peninsula. Let's get a better look at this, because to time those might be the most important part about the forecast for Monday. Say goodbye to that time lapse. We'll say goodbye to the satellite imagery, which would have been there. And now we're going to take a look ahead to the isolated thunderstorms once the widespread steady rain of tonight clears out. And the North Bay has a better chance for this. Look how different this looks tomorrow morning. Let's stop it right there. 6 a.m. Those can deliver some brief downpours, maybe some gusty winds, and even some small hail with them. So this is your Monday morning, and that could have an impact on the Monday morning commute, specifically in the North Bay, because this is going to get hung up in the North Bay for most of the morning. And then once we get into the late morning and early afternoon, then the showers will start to show up south of the Golden Gate. And then everybody else gets their chance through late morning and early afternoon to see a few more of those isolated on again, off again, hit and miss thunderstorms. And then it's all going to clear out by about 5 o'clock and we'll be done. We look at the rainfall totals from this. They're not big. It's about a half an inch of rain. So we're not worried about flooding from this. There's another storm coming. And that one's going to get here late Wednesday into Thursday. We can time that one out now. Totally separate storm. This is now Wednesday late afternoon. Going to do the same thing. Widespread band of rain will move across the bay, but this will be primarily overnight, Wednesday night, into early Thursday morning. This one is not as well put together as the one we're about to see for tonight and tomorrow morning. So the totals are not as big. Maybe it's more like a quarter of an inch of rain instead of, half an inch of rain. And then that might be the last car on the train. I don't really see anything else coming down the road, which means when we get our snow from this system, and we'll get about 2 feet of snow in the Sierra, that's from the one tonight, and then the one that comes through on Wednesday puts down a few more inches. This might be the last significant, meaningful snow that we get before the big April 1st snow survey. That's the one that tells us how we did for the winter as a whole. And for right now, we're sitting at about 90% of average. And the way those storms are put together, they'll probably keep us on pace to stay there. So we probably come in a little below average for snow on the season for this year. 7-day forecast shows you what we got. Next chance of rain, Wednesday night into Thursday.
From CBS News Bay Area, this is the Evening Edition.
Welcome back. A federal judge blocked the Trump administration from using an antique wartime law to deport suspected gang members from Venezuela. But 2 planes carrying them were already in the air when the ruling came down. CBS's Christian Benavides has the latest.
The government of El Salvador released images Sunday showing what they say are 261 gang members deported from the U.S., mainly from Venezuela, that will be held in detention by that country. The announcement comes after a federal judge blocked the Trump administration from invoking a 1798 law called the Alien Enemies Act. The law would allow the arrest and deportation without typical due process of Venezuelan migrants who are accused of being members of the South American gang, Tren de Aragua. The judge in Washington blocked deportations with a 14-day restraining order. He said planes already in the air carrying deportees should turn around. It's unclear if the Trump administration violated that order.
We want to get rid of Tren de Aragua gang members. They're terrorists too. The president designated them, asked me to designate, and I did, as a terrorist organization. We want to get rid of them as well. We don't want terrorists in America. I don't know how hard that is to understand.
On Face the Nation, Secretary of State Marco Rubio also defended the administration's move to begin deportation proceedings against Mahmoud Khalil, a U.S. permanent resident who organized pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University.
If he had told us, I'm going over there, and I'm going over there to become the spokesperson and one of the leaders of a movement that's going to turn one of your allegedly elite colleges upside down, people can't even go to school, library buildings being vandalized, we never would have let him in.
Meantime, concerns over tariffs still hang heavy for investors. The U.S. stock market will seek to recover Monday after a bruising week, which saw the worst losses in 2 years.
In other economic news, inflation is actually easing a bit. A new report shows prices in February were up only 2.8% from a year ago. That's the first drop in 4 months. Cost of gas is down, you'd hardly know it here, and price for new vehicles also fell. Grocery prices were flat from January through February. But economists say that tariffs could push prices back up. And it's the end of an era for Southwest Airlines. That airline announced that it is ending its free checked bag policy beginning May 28th. Southwest CEO said they need to make profit again. This comes after he announced the end of open seating on Southwest planes next year. Well, we were talking about inflation easing a bit, but not when it comes to eggs. So producers are scrambling, of course, to find alternatives, as Suji Nam reports.
It may look like an egg, but it's not. It's a vegan alternative made with mung beans.
The experiments we ran were in my buddy's studio apartment in Los Angeles.
Soon enough, Josh Tetrick found the protein sequences to create a texture similar to scrambled eggs. 3 years later, they launched this vegan alternative, Just Eggs, while continuing to test more recipes out of Emeryville.
And this machine over here spins it really fast. Fiber, fat, starch comes out, and then we're left with whole mung bean protein.
You may have seen the Just Eggs product when you're at the grocery store, sitting right by cartons of eggs. Well, probably now, mostly empty shelves due to the bird flu. But Josh says his business has been booming nationwide as more consumers are scrambling to buy egg alternatives.
Just Egg is growing 5 times faster today relative to the same period a year ago. It's also growing 5 times faster than chicken eggs.
Anecdotally, he's been hearing of more interest in egg alternatives overall.
The topic of egg prices came up, and they said, I saw this yellow carton, it was the only egg on the shelf, and I tried it, and it tasted like an egg.
According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the national average price for a dozen of eggs was $5.90 last month, nearly a $1 jump from January. And in California, the USDA reported that in March, the average price of a dozen eggs, $10.35. But the cost of chicken eggs hasn't impacted Rat Radish, a San Francisco vegan restaurant. In fact, they tell us the egg shortage has actually made them busier than ever.
It's been very popular, like these 3 weeks, because you know the problem with the egg and the source, we don't have any egg in San Francisco.
Carlos Suarez, the sous chef of Rat Radish, serves Just Egg in their dishes and says today's price of grocery store eggs pushes customers to try something new. And back here in Emeryville, Josh says with the impact of the bird flu, it opens up a greater conversation about environmental sustainability.
The good thing about using beans is you can pack them body to body in tiny little spaces, and they're never going to get the flu, they're never going to breathe on each other. So it allows us to make eggs in a more efficient way.
And it also shows that in a time of dwindling egg supply, families in the Bay Area and nationwide are resorting to alternatives to get that near perfect egg.
Big question, of course, what does it taste like? Well, Suji sampled them all, and she said that she did taste the difference. It's not the same density as real eggs. Suji said that it is similar to tofu. So there you go. Still ahead, a San Francisco artist is not pleased that her mural was vandalized after some of her neighbors were apparently not pleased about the Great Highway being shut down. We'll have that little story after a break. Well, people in the Sunset got together to repair a vandalized mural near the Great Highway in San Francisco. Organizers told us that more than 100 volunteers showed up to help today. That mural was defaced 2 nights ago, a day after the scenic stretch of road, the Great Highway, was shut down to traffic for good. A majority of neighbors living near the highway voted against closing it, and we spoke with one of the mural's artists.
The art is meant as a gift for the community, and with the community showing up to support it in this way, I hope people will realize that defacing the public art piece will have no bearing on this voter-determined measure.
Emily also said that a lot of people have contributed to painting the mural. We spoke with another volunteer from the Sunset who said that they're happy to help out.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's it's really heartbreaking to hear about it, but this response is amazing, and I think it shows the heart of this neighborhood. You know, we're here to help, and it's going to be a beautiful addition to the park.
Organizers are planning to continue the cleanup again on Wednesday and Friday, and coming up, party started a little early for St. Patrick's Day. More on the celebration happening in San Francisco, but first, here's Darren.
Oh, the way this storm is put together, we're going to get two sides of it. First, we're going to get the widespread steady rain tonight. But then, it's the center of the storm out here. Look at it up there. That is going to swing through tomorrow morning. And when it gets here, we could get some isolated thunderstorms with that. We'll talk about it. We'll time it out. We'll talk about how Sunday night's rain is different from Monday morning. And then we'll look at the next storm by the middle of the week. Forecast on that's coming up next. Okay, the rain coming through for Sunday night and Monday is coming through in two distinct chapters, and I want to get you ready for both. Specifically, the second chapter on Monday morning. That's going to look a little more impressive, and I'll show you why in 1 second. But first, let's go through Sunday night. We take a look at radar taking us into Sunday evening and see the light showers have already shown up. We haven't gotten a whole lot of rain out of this yet we can measure. Let me show you how that is about to change. We're going to bring on the Futurecast imagery, and I'm going to take us ahead into the early part of the evening. So watch what happens as we go from now. Bring this up to about, say, the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock hour. You're going to see a lot more rain develop out here. And by the time we get in between 8 and 9, now you can see the front. That's the cold front coming in. You can trace this. You can kind of follow that line of rain as it extends in an organized line from the peninsula up to the North Bay. This is the point where we get the widespread steady rain. Never too intensely heavy, but widespread steady and sticking around for a while. Watch what happens. We'll take it from that. We're going to go from like 8, 9 o'clock, and we're going to let that play very quickly through the overnight hours. So the showers will start to wind down by like 2 or 3 in the morning. But then the second phase is going to show up. And you can see what I'm talking about here. So this is tomorrow. This is Monday morning at like 9 a.m. And what you see on here are these little isolated beads. There's another one way down there. You see there's another bullseye there. These are going to come in the form of isolated showers and occasional thunderstorms. Look up here for a second. That's the satellite imagery just before the sun went down on Sunday. And if we get a close-up look at this, what you can see on here is you've got that long stream where the clouds are coming in. That's where you're going to get the steady rain that we will tonight. Let's pull this into the monitor over here behind me so I can get a little more specific on why what's sitting off the coast there maybe is a little more interesting. So instead of looking at it up there, let's put it behind me. And this is Monday morning. Look at the little counterclockwise spin there. Within that low, that's where you get the thunderstorms. So this is Sunday night, widespread steady rain. Here's your break, like 3, 4 a.m. where nothing's going to happen. And then from like 5 in the morning until noon, we're going to be in that. Let me show you what that looks like when we put it into the futurecast, and you'll see how the nature of the rain changes. There goes the stuff for Sunday night. Widespread, steady, comes to an end around 3 in the morning. We get a little bit of a break. There's your back edge. And now this shows up, seemingly out of nowhere, but now we know that's the center of the low coming overhead. Here's your time, 6 a.m. For about the next 3 or 4 hours, it's going to get hung up in the North Bay, and you're going to have some isolated, hit and miss, on again, off again showers. Some of them will come in the form of thunderstorms. That line right there in particular would look pretty good. So would these little isolated cells with deeper red on their own. Doesn't happen exactly there at exactly that time, but in general, through like the 5 a.m. hour to 10 a.m., it's going to look like that. For the North Bay, isolated hit and miss showers. And then after that, it gets down to the rest of the bay. So from like 10 a.m. onward, you get your scattered on again, off again hit and miss showers from the city southward. And then that will come to an end by about 5 in the afternoon. We don't get a whole lot of rain in general from this, but if you get one of those cells right over you, you can get a good little downpour and pick up perhaps about quarter of an inch in 30 minutes. Or an hour. But in general, it's about a ½ inch of rain if you just kind of overgeneralize the storm as a whole. That's the one for tonight and tomorrow. This is the next one. This one comes in as we get into Wednesday night, overnight Wednesday, into Thursday morning. Does not look as impressive. That one probably gives us about a ½ of an inch of rain total before it's all said and done. All right, let's put it in a 7-day forecast. There's our system for Monday morning, isolated scattered showers with occasional thunderstorms. Tuesday, no rain. Wednesday, the rain doesn't get here till late. So it's Wednesday night into Thursday morning, about another ½ of an inch of rain, and then that should pretty much be it. All right, Brian, back over to you.
All righty, Darren, thank you. More St. Patrick's Day celebrations this weekend ahead of the big day tomorrow. The United Irish Cultural Center of San Francisco held their annual block party at 45th Avenue this afternoon near Ocean Beach, where neighbors like Liam were able to toast their Irish heritage.
And so it's really a day where the community could come out and celebrate with us around the St. Patrick's season.
And he said that today's weather kind of reminded him quite a bit of Ireland, in fact. And coming up next, we're introducing you to a Stanford professor who's using his cancer diagnosis for the subject of his class. It's an incredible story. We'll have it when we come back. Welcome back. A professor from Stanford showing incredible courage in the face of a terminal cancer diagnosis. Liz Cook spoke to Dr. Lin about how he's hoping to use his battle to inspire a new generation of doctors and professors.
This week, leading experts are meeting at Stanford University to talk about the rising rates of lung cancer in people who have never smoked. The man leading this first-of-its-kind summit is Dr. Bryant Lin. Dr. Lin has dedicated the past 6 years of his life to raising money and awareness to rising rates of this disease in Asians. Now, he himself is part of this troubling statistic. But his diagnosis has not stopped his mission, and now he is paying it forward.
I always get a little anxious before chemotherapy. I'm still getting chemotherapy every 3 weeks.
Dr. Bryant Lin has been a physician and a professor at Stanford University for almost 2 decades. But this time, he's not only the teacher, he's also the subject. In late spring of 2024, Dr. Lin was battling a bad cough for months. A CT scan revealed it was non-small cell adenocarcinoma, never smoker lung cancer, and it had spread.
And I ended up having stage 4, which is the most advanced stage of lung cancer, which is not considered curable at all.
The news was a dose of cruel irony. Dr. Lin co-founded the Center for Asian Health Research and Education.
One of our priority areas is lung cancer in people who have never smoked, because it disproportionately affects Asians, and particularly Asian women. You know, I've become the poster child for this disease.
Within weeks, Dr. Lin was in a chemotherapy infusion chair, receiving the same treatment he counseled his patients and students on for years. It was here that he saw an opportunity.
How can I make lemonade from lemons, right? And I thought, geez, you know, when I was a student, if I had heard a class that was taught by somebody who's both a physician and a patient, it would just so much change my perspective.
The class is called From Diagnosis to Dialogue, a doctor's real-time battle with cancer. Within minutes, the class and the wait list was full.
Yeah, it was really surprising. Our first session, we kind of violated probably some fire codes by having too many students show up. They were sitting on the floor.
How do you deal with a lot of the ethical considerations?
Isabella Hefferman was one of the lucky ones to get a seat.
What really stood out to me was from the first class, he very openly, very upfront said that this is a terminal diagnosis. And so I was just really in awe in how well he's able to discuss this, and just the bravery, but also the emotions he brings in.
The 10-week course covers the entire spectrum of cancer, as seen through the eyes of someone who is living it.
And some patients don't want to engage. They don't necessarily want to know all these details. So I really wanted to share that personal experience of what it's like to be, to suffer from side effects from chemotherapy, to talk about nutrition with my wife. What do I eat? To talk about, spiritual care.
Each week, a new topic and guest lecturer, like Dr. Heather Wakely. Dr. Lin's oncologist and a leading voice in the research of lung cancer and never smokers.
In medical school, we learn a lot about the pathophysiology, the disease itself, all of the details, the cells, the molecules, it's all down deep. And we also learn about interactions with people. But sometimes the whole connecting the two can be a little bit harder to see.
And his wife, Christine, who has her own experience when it comes to living and loving someone with an incurable disease.
What's happening today is something that you have control. And don't read too much, actually, believe it or not, about statistics or outcome of what happened to other people.
We were able to get a bigger room on some days like this.
Dr. Lin plans to teach his class for as long as he can. The syllabus, like his cancer journey, may change, but his mission remains the same.
Heart disease and cancer are the leading causes of death in the United States. So this is going to impact somebody you know closely, maybe yourself. So I want them at an early age, when they're young and healthy, they're seemingly invincible, to really get a sense of what people go through as they deal with a very serious illness.
Lessons like these only come around once in a lifetime.
What an incredible man. Lung cancer, by the way, among Asians who never smoked, is on the rise, especially for women. Of the Asian women diagnosed with lung cancer, more than half are non-smokers. Now, for all racial group, that number is only 15%. So only 15% of people in general, amongst women, only 15% who had no history of smoking got the disease. So most didn't. So it's a mystery. We do have extensive coverage on the issue on kpix.com. We've also got a link to our YouTube page where you can find all of Dr. Lin's classes, and that would be something to listen to. As for watching, we appreciate your watching. 60 Minutes is coming up next, and we'll see you back here at 11 o'clock tonight. Darren will be tracking the storms. Until then, the news will continue streaming on CBS News Bay Area, and in the meantime, we'll see you at 11 o'clock tonight. Have a good evening.